Dr. Sarah Chen almost dropped her coffee when the screens in the SETI control room lit up like a Christmas tree. The radio telescopes had been scanning deep space for decades, searching for any sign of intelligent life. Today, at 3:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, they found it. "This can't be right," muttered James Rodriguez, the night shift supervisor, as he stared at the incoming data stream. The signal was unlike anything they had ever detected. It wasn't the simple mathematical sequences scientists had expected from an alien civilization. This was complex, desperate, and unmistakably a distress call. Sarah rushed to her workstation, her hands flying across the keyboard as she began analyzing the transmission. The signal was coming from the Kepler 442 system, roughly 1/200 light-years away. But somehow, impossibly, it was reaching Earth in real time. "James, look at this frequency modulation," Sarah said, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "This isn't just a message, it's a quantum-entangled communication. They're using technology we can barely understand to send this across space instantly." The message itself took 6 hours to decode, but when the translation algorithms finally cracked it, the silence in the control room was deafening. Sarah read the words aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. "To any sentient species capable of receiving this transmission, the Kepler 442 system is under attack by an entity we call the Devourers. We are the Zephyrians, a peaceful civilization of 3 billion souls. Our defenses have failed, our ships are destroyed. We estimate 72 hours before complete planetary sterilization. We do not ask for rescue, as we know none can reach us in time. We ask only that someone somewhere remembers that we existed, that we loved, that we hoped, that we dreamed of stars. Do not mourn us. Learn from our fate. The Devourers move between systems. They will come for others. Be ready, be strong, be united. This is our last transmission." The message repeated every 12 minutes, each time growing weaker as their transmitters failed. Within hours, news of the alien SOS had reached every government on Earth. The immediate response was predictable: confusion, panic, and heated debates about authenticity. But something extraordinary happened in the next few days. As the world's leading scientists confirmed the signal's validity, as astronomers detected massive energy discharges from the Kepler 442 system through conventional telescopes, humanity didn't collapse into chaos. Instead, they did something that surprised even themselves. They got angry. President Elena Vasquez called an emergency session of the United Nations. For the first time in human history, representatives from every nation sat in the same room with a common purpose. The debates were fierce but brief. The question wasn't whether to respond. It was how quickly they could mobilize. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Vasquez addressed the assembly, 3 days ago, we learned we are not alone in the universe. 2 days ago, we witnessed genocide on an unimaginable scale. Today, we decide what kind of species humanity will be remembered as." The Chinese delegate stood first. "The People's Republic pledges our entire space fleet and manufacturing capabilities to this effort." The Russian representative was next. "The motherland offers our nuclear arsenal and propulsion technology." One by one, every nation committed their resources. Old enemies found themselves working side by side. The United States shared their most classified spacecraft designs. The European Union opened their advanced laboratories. India provided their breakthrough fusion reactors. Japan offered their precision manufacturing. Even the smallest nations contributed what they could: scientists, raw materials, moral support. Dr. Chen found herself appointed as the head of the newly formed Terran Response Initiative. The task seemed impossible. Build a fleet capable of interstellar travel, arm it with weapons that could fight an unknown enemy, and somehow reach a solar system that was 1,200 light-years away, all while knowing they were probably too late. But humans had always been good at impossible tasks. The first breakthrough came from Dr. Yuki Tanaka in Tokyo. Working with the quantum entanglement data from the alien transmission, she developed a theoretical framework for faster-than-light travel. It wasn't hyperdrive or warp speed like in the movies. It was something far stranger, a way to fold space-time using massive gravitational fields. "We can't travel faster than light," she explained to the assembled scientists, "but we can make the journey shorter by bringing the destination closer to us." The second breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Professor Abdul Hassan, a nuclear physicist from Damascus, had been studying the energy signatures from the Kepler 442 system. The Devourers, whatever they were, used weapons that converted matter directly into energy, the most efficient destructive force possible. "If they can unmake matter," Hassan reasoned, "then perhaps we can remake it, turn their own technology against them." Construction began simultaneously on 6 continents. The Amazon rainforest became a massive shipyard, carefully designed to minimize environmental impact. The Sahara Desert bloomed with manufacturing plants powered by fusion reactors. The Pacific Ocean hosted floating construction platforms that assembled hull sections the size of city blocks. The ships they built were unlike anything humanity had ever created. Each vessel was over 2 kilometers long, bristling with experimental weapons and powered by artificial black holes contained in magnetic fields. They called them Redemption-class battleships, and they built 57 of them in 8 months. The engineering challenges were staggering. How do you feed a crew of thousands during a journey that might take years? How do you maintain morale when traveling toward a battle you might not win? How do you prepare for combat against an enemy you've never seen? Sarah often stood in the observation deck of the flagship, watching Earth grow smaller behind them during the test flights. She thought about the Zephyrians, a species they had never met, who had reached across impossible distances to share their final moments with strangers. In their last hours, they had chosen hope over despair, unity over division. The crew of the Terran fleet came from every corner of Earth. Former enemies worked the same shifts, shared the same meals, trusted each other with their lives. Commander Maria Santos, a former Brazilian naval officer, served alongside Captain Ivan Petrov, whose grandfather had fought against Brazil in old territorial disputes. Dr. Kwame Asante from Ghana worked with Dr. Sarah Kim from South Korea to develop new weapons systems. The ship's chaplain was a collection of religious leaders who had learned to pray together despite different faiths. "You know what's funny?" Commander Santos said to Sarah one evening as they reviewed mission plans. "We spent centuries fighting each other over pieces of dirt on one planet. Now we're crossing the galaxy to help people we've never met." Sarah nodded, watching the stars through the viewport. "Maybe that's what makes us human. We care about strangers." The quantum communication array they had built finally achieved stable contact with other civilizations. Not all the signals they received were distress calls. Some were messages of curiosity, others of greeting. But many were warnings. The Devourers had struck before. Dozens of systems had fallen silent over the past century. As the fleet prepared for departure, Sarah received one last transmission from deep space. It was faint, barely distinguishable from background radiation, but the quantum signature was unmistakable. Somewhere in the Kepler 442 system, something was still transmitting. "This is Zephyrian Outpost 77 Alpha. If anyone receives this message, know that we survived. We are hidden, but we are alive. The Devourers have moved to consume our star itself. Our world burns, but our spirit endures. We watch the skies for hope." Sarah shared the message with the fleet commanders. The mission had changed. This was no longer just about justice or revenge or proving humanity's worth to the galaxy. This was about rescue. Admiral Zhang Wei, the overall fleet commander, addressed the entire armada before departure. His words were broadcast to every ship, every crew member, every person who had worked to make this mission possible. Today, we leave Earth not as Americans or Chinese or Europeans or Africans, but as humans. We carry with us the hopes of our entire species and the memory of a people who trusted us with their final words. We go to fight an enemy we do not understand, to save people we have never met, in a place so distant that light itself takes 12 centuries to cross the void between us. Some will call this foolish. Some will call it impossible. They're probably right. But we are human, and humans have always specialized in proving the impossible possible. The departure was magnificent and terrifying. 57 massive ships, each carrying a piece of humanity's soul, activated their exotic matter drives simultaneously. Space twisted around them, reality folded like origami, and in a flash of brilliant light that could be seen from Earth's surface, they vanished into the cosmic dark. Behind them, they left a planet united for the first time in its history. Ahead of them lay the unknown, the dangerous, and the impossible. But they were human, and they had answered the call of strangers with the greatest fleet their species had ever built. Whatever waited in the Kepler 442 system, they would meet it together. The journey through folded space was nothing like the movies had portrayed. There was no sensation of movement, no visual distortion, no dramatic light shows. One moment the Terran fleet existed in normal space near Earth, and the next they emerged from the quantum fold 15 billion kilometers from Kepler 442b. Admiral Jiang Wei stood on the bridge of the flagship Humanity's Hope, watching the tactical displays populate with data from their long-range sensors. What they found defied everything they thought they knew about warfare. The Kepler 442 system was dying. The star itself was surrounded by a massive mechanical structure, like a cage of dark metal that pulsed with malevolent energy. Streams of stellar material were being siphoned away, feeding something vast and hungry that existed in the shadow between planets. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. "The Devourers aren't just attacking the planets. They're eating the sun." Dr. Chen, now serving as the fleet's chief science officer, studied the readings with growing horror. "Those structures around the star, they're converting solar matter into some kind of exotic energy. The entire system's gravitational balance is collapsing." Captain Petrov, commanding the battleship Red October, appeared on the communication screen. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures on the dark side of the second planet. Whatever's left of the Zephyrian civilization is down there, but they're surrounded." The Devourers themselves were unlike anything humanity had imagined. They weren't ships in any conventional sense, but living structures that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Each creature was the size of a city, with surfaces that shifted and flowed like liquid metal. They moved through space without visible propulsion, reality bending around them as they approached their targets. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Park, "we're receiving that quantum transmission again. The Zephyrian survivors are still active, but their signal is getting weaker. I estimate maybe 6 hours before their power fails completely." Admiral Jiang studied the tactical situation. 57 human ships against what appeared to be hundreds of Devourer entities, plus the massive stellar engineering project that was slowly killing the system's star. Any conventional military strategist would call it suicide. Fortunately, humans had never been particularly conventional. "All ships, this is humanity's hope," Zhang broadcast to the fleet. "We're going to do something the Devourers won't expect. We're going to save people instead of destroying things. Blue Squadron, begin evacuation approach to the planet. Green Squadron, provide cover and harassment of Devourer forces. Red Squadron, you're with me. We're going to shut down that star cage." The battle began the moment the human ships moved into the inner system. The Devourers responded immediately, their reality-warping weapons reaching across space to tear at the approaching fleet. but human engineers had studied the energy signatures from the Zephyrian transmissions. They knew what was coming. The first human innovation that surprised the Devourers was adaptive shielding. Instead of trying to block the matter conversion weapons, human ships used them. The exotic energy that was meant to unmake their hulls was captured and redirected into their own power systems. The harder the Devourers attacked, the stronger the human ships became. Commander Santos, leading Blue Squadron toward the planet, found herself in the strangest combat of her life. Her ship, the São Paulo, was taking fire from 3 Devourer entities simultaneously, but instead of weakening, her engines were running at 140% efficiency. "All ships, this is São Paulo," she reported, unable to keep the amazement out of her voice. "These things are literally feeding power to our ships. Engineering reports we've never had this much energy to work with." The planet itself was a heartbreaking sight. Once blue oceans had turned gray with ash. Massive craters scarred the continents where Devourer weapons had struck. But in the deep valleys and underground caverns, life persisted. The Zephyrians had gone underground, building vast shelter complexes that stretched for kilometers beneath the surface. Dr. Chen worked frantically to establish communication with the survivors. The Zephyrians, it turned out, were not so different from humans. They were bipedal, tool-using, and possessed of an unbreakable will to survive. When the first human shuttles landed near the primary shelter complex, the alien survivors emerged with something humans recognized immediately: hope. The Zephyrian leader, a being called Keth-Ara, whose silver skin shimmered in the dim light, approached the human landing party with obvious caution. Through the translation devices, her first words to humanity were simple: "You came. We never believed anyone would come." Captain Rodriguez, leading the evacuation team, replied in the matter-of-fact tone that had become humanity's signature: "We got your message. We don't leave people behind." The evacuation was a masterpiece of controlled chaos. Human ships, designed for war, were rapidly reconfigured for refugee transport. Cargo bays became temporary shelters. Weapon storage became medical facilities. The mess halls expanded to accommodate alien dietary requirements that human nutritionists worked out on the fly. But the real miracle happened in the crew quarters. Without being asked, human crew members began doubling and tripling up in their bunks to make room for Zephyrian families. Soldiers gave up their personal space to comfort traumatized alien children. Engineers worked 30-hour shifts to modify life support systems for a completely different physiology. Meanwhile, Admiral Zhang led Red Squadron toward the stellar cage that was slowly killing the system's star. The structure was massive beyond comprehension, its dark metal framework extending for millions of kilometers around the solar core. Getting close enough to attack it meant flying directly through the heaviest concentration of Devourer forces. "All ships, this is humanity's hope," Zhang announced as they began their approach. "Remember, we're not here to win a conventional battle. We're here to break something that was supposedly unbreakable, save people who were supposedly lost, and prove that hope can travel faster than light." The assault on the stellar cage was brutal. The Devourers seemed to understand, perhaps for the first time, that these newcomers represented a genuine threat to their operations. They converged on the human ships like antibodies attacking an infection. But humans had brought something the Devourers had never encountered before: spite. Pure, stubborn, unreasonable human spite. When the battleship Moscow took critical damage to its main drive, Captain Volkov didn't retreat. He rerouted power from life support to weapons and kept fighting. When the Berlin's command crew was incapacitated by a reality warping attack, Chief Engineer Muller took control from the engine room and flew the ship using thruster commands alone. Dr. Hassan, the physicist, who had helped design their weapons, made a discovery that changed everything. The Devourers weren't truly alive in any sense humans understood. They were artificial constructs, tools created by something else entirely, something that had been harvesting the energy of entire solar systems for millennia. Admiral Hassan reported from his position aboard the research vessel Newton. These aren't the real enemy. They're just machines, incredibly advanced machines, but machines nonetheless, and machines can be hacked. The breakthrough came from the most unlikely source. Ensign Maria Gutierrez, a communications officer barely out of academy, was monitoring Devourer command frequencies when she noticed something odd. The entities coordinated their actions using quantum-entangled communication, the same technology the Zephyrians had used to send their SOS. "Sir," she reported to Admiral Zhang, "I think I can disrupt their communication network. If these things operate like a hive mind and we cut their connections—" "Do it," Zhang ordered without hesitation. What happened next would be studied by military historians for centuries. Ensign Gutierrez, working with Dr. Chen and the quantum communication array, didn't just disrupt the Devourer network, she hijacked it. Suddenly, instead of coordinated attacks, the Devourer entities began attacking each other. Their reality-warping weapons turned inward. The massive stellar cage began to destabilize as its component sections received conflicting instructions. All ships, Zhang broadcast to the fleet. Commence immediate attack on stellar cage structure. Target the quantum communication nodes. We're going to free this star the same way we freed ourselves, by refusing to accept that some things are impossible. The destruction of the stellar cage was spectacular and terrifying. As the human ships systematically destroyed the quantum nodes that controlled the harvesting operation, the dark metal framework began to collapse. Massive sections fell into the star itself, released gravitational forces spinning wildly out of control. But something wonderful happened as the cage broke apart. The star, freed from artificial constraints, blazed back to full life. Solar radiation swept outward, carrying energy and warmth to planets that had been slowly freezing as their sun was drained away. On Kepler 442b, still in the midst of evacuation, Zephyrian children looked up at the sky and saw their star shining bright for the first time in years. Many of them had never seen their sun at full strength. The adults wept. The children laughed and danced. Commander Santos, coordinating the final evacuation runs, received a message from one of the Zephyrian elders. Through the translator, the alien's words were simple but profound. We had forgotten that stars could shine so bright. We had forgotten that hope could come from strangers. We will never forget again. As the last human ships prepared to depart the system, now carrying over 2 million Zephyrian refugees, Admiral Zhang received an unprecedented communication. It came from deep space, from multiple star systems, in a dozen different alien languages. The message was the same in every transmission. "We heard what you did. We are coming to help. You are no longer alone." Humanity had answered one species' call for help. In return, half the galaxy was answering theirs. 6 months after the Kepler 442 operation, Earth was no longer the same planet. The returning human fleet brought with them over 2 million Zephyrian refugees. But more importantly, they brought proof that humanity was not alone in the universe, and that they had chosen to be protectors rather than conquerors. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Unity station, orbiting Earth at the Lagrange point between Earth and Luna. Through the massive viewports, she could see the most remarkable sight in human history, a fleet of alien vessels from 17 different civilizations, all here to meet the species that had crossed 1,200 light-years to answer a stranger's call for help. The integration of Zephyrian refugees into human society had been surprisingly smooth. Their physiology was compatible with Earth's environment, and their technology complemented human engineering in unexpected ways. Zephyrian bio-neural computers merged with human quantum processors created hybrid systems that could solve problems neither species could handle alone. But the real integration happened at the human level. Families across Earth opened their homes to alien refugees. Children played together despite speaking different languages. Zephyrian art began appearing in human museums, while human music resonated through Zephyrian settlements. Cathara, the Zephyrian leader, had become something of a celebrity on Earth, but not in the way she expected. Human media didn't treat her as an exotic alien specimen. Instead, they portrayed her as she was, a leader who had kept her people alive through impossible circumstances, someone who understood sacrifice and hope. "Your species is strange," she told Sarah during one of their regular conversations. "We expected you to treat us as curiosities or resources. Instead, you treat us as family." Sarah smiled, looking out at a group of human and Zephyrian children playing in the station's recreation area. "That's what humans do. We adopt strays." The arrival of other alien civilizations had been even more remarkable. The Cortani, an insectoid species from the Vega system, had traveled for months to reach Earth after hearing about humanity's rescue mission. The Valdris, energy beings from a binary star system, had literally converted themselves into radio waves to make the journey faster. Each species brought their own story of encounters with the Devourers. The pattern was always the same. A thriving civilization would detect the first signs of the stellar cages, realize their doom was approaching, and begin sending out desperate messages to anyone who might listen. Until now, no one had ever answered. Admiral Zhang, now serving as Earth's first director of interstellar relations, found himself in meetings that would have been pure science fiction just 2 years earlier. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in Unity Station's council chambers to coordinate the formation of something unprecedented, a mutual defense alliance based not on politics or economics, but on the simple principle that no one should die alone. The Galactic Rescue Consortium, as it came to be known, operated on a philosophy that was distinctly human in origin, but universal in appeal. Every member civilization committed to answering distress calls regardless of their origin. Resources would be shared freely. Knowledge would be exchanged openly. No species would be allowed to face extinction while others had the power to help. But the real test came when long-range sensors detected devourer activity in the Tau Ceti system, only 12 light-years from Earth. A species called the Kelnari had been sending increasingly desperate messages for 3 weeks. The response was swift and decisive. Humanity's fleet had grown to over 200 ships, now crewed by mixed human and alien crews. The Cortani contributed their biotechnology. The Valdris provided energy manipulation techniques. The Zephyrians offered their expertise in underground survival systems. Commander Santos, now an admiral herself, led the joint task force. As her ship dropped out of Quantum Fold near Tau Ceti, she found herself commanding the most diverse fleet in galactic history. "All ships, this is Admiral Santos aboard the New Sao Paulo," she broadcast to the Armada. "We know what we're here to do. The Kelnari sent out an SOS. We're here to answer it." The battle for Tau Ceti was different from Kepler 442. This time, the humans and their allies arrived before the Devourers could complete their stellar cage. The enemy was caught off guard, unprepared for coordinated resistance from multiple species. The hybrid tactics developed by the Alliance proved devastatingly effective. Human stubbornness combined with Cortani adaptability, Valdris energy manipulation, and Zephyrian technical precision created a fighting force unlike anything the Devourers had encountered in millennia. But the most important moment came when Admiral Santos made contact with the Kelnari survivors. The aliens were a crystalline species, their bodies composed of living mineral matrices that could survive in environments that would kill most organic life. They had retreated to the molten core of their planet, where they were slowly dying as the Devourers drained energy from their star. This is Admiral Santos of the Terran Galactic Rescue Fleet, she transmitted down to the planet's core. We received your distress signal. Prepare for immediate evacuation. The reply came back in harmonious crystal tones that the translation computers rendered into words. Terrans? The species that saved the Zephyrians? We thought, we hoped, but we never believed you would come for us too. We go where we're needed, Santos replied simply. That's what friends do. The evacuation of the Kelnari required engineering solutions no single species could have developed. Human ships couldn't survive in the molten environment where the aliens had taken refuge. Cortani bioships could withstand the heat, but couldn't navigate the intense magnetic fields. Valdris energy forms could move freely through the molten rock, but couldn't carry solid matter. The solution was pure collaboration. Valdris entities guided Cortani bioships through the magnetic chaos while human engineers operated protective field generators from safe distances. The rescue operation took 48 hours of continuous work by crews who had learned to trust each other completely. When the last Kelnari refugee ship cleared the planet's surface, Admiral Santos gave the order to destroy the incomplete stellar cage. The combined fleet turned their hybrid weapons on the Devourer construction, tearing it apart before it could begin draining the star. But something unexpected happened as the cage collapsed. Dr. Chen, monitoring the quantum frequencies from her position aboard the science vessel Discovery, detected something that made her heart race. "Admiral," she reported, her voice tight with excitement, "the Devourer's quantum network isn't just local to each system. It's connected to something massive, something central. When we destroyed this cage, we sent a signal through their entire network." The implications were staggering. For the first time since encountering the Devourers, the Alliance had struck a blow that the enemy's creators would feel. Somewhere in deep space, something ancient and malevolent had just learned that its harvest was being disrupted. The return journey to Earth was triumphant but sobering. The fleet had saved another species, proven that cooperation between diverse civilizations was possible, and dealt a significant blow to humanity's greatest enemy. But they had also announced their presence to something that had been consuming stellar energy for millions of years. Back on Earth, the Galactic Rescue Consortium held its first full assembly. Representatives from 37 species gathered in Unity Station's Great Hall, a space designed to accommodate beings of radically different physiologies and environmental needs. Admiral Zhang addressed the assembly with words that would be remembered as the foundation of interstellar civilization. 6 months ago, humanity received an SOS from strangers in distress. Today, we stand here not as separate species competing for resources, but as friends united in common cause. The Devourers have harvested entire civilizations for eons, counting on our isolation, our fear, our assumption that we must face the universe alone. Today, we prove them wrong. The Kelnari representative, a being of living crystal whose voice rang like temple bells, spoke for many when she said, "Our species has words for courage, for sacrifice, for hope. But until we met humans, we had no word for what you have shown us. You have taught us that strangers can be family, that distance cannot diminish compassion, that the strongest response to fear is to help someone else feel safe." But perhaps the most significant moment came when the Zephyrian children who had been rescued from Kepler 442 presented a gift to the assembly. Working together with human children from Earth schools, they had created a quantum beacon, not for sending distress signals, but for broadcasting something else entirely. Kethara explained their gift. "For too long, the galaxy has heard only cries for help echoing through the darkness. Today, the children of two worlds send out a different message." The beacon activated, sending its signal out across the galaxy at quantum speeds. The message was simple, broadcast in every known language, and many that were purely mathematical. "You are not alone. If you need help, call out. Someone will answer. If you can help others, listen for their call. Together, we are stronger than anything the universe can send against us. This is the promise of the Galactic Rescue Consortium. No one dies alone. No one faces the darkness without friends. Within days, the beacon began receiving responses. Not distress calls, but messages of hope. Species that had hidden from the devourers for centuries began emerging from concealment. Ancient civilizations that had given up on cooperation began reaching out to their neighbors. Dr. Chen, now Earth's chief xenobiologist, often stood in Unity Station's observation deck, watching the stream of ships arriving from across the galaxy. Each vessel brought new friends, new knowledge, new hope. "You know what's funny?" she said to Kithara during one of their conversations. "When we first received your distress signal, we thought we were answering your call for help. Turns out you were answering ours." Kithara's silver skin shimmered with what humans had learned was Zephyrian laughter. "How so?" "We'd been alone for so long we'd forgotten what we were capable of when we had something worth fighting for. You gave us a reason to be our best selves. You reminded us that the most human thing we could do was help someone else." Earth's transformation continued. The planet that had once been divided by borders and prejudices had become the unofficial capital of an alliance spanning hundreds of light years. Human children grew up learning alien languages alongside their own. Earth's universities welcomed students from dozens of species. Human technology merged with alien science to create innovations neither could have achieved alone. But the most important change was philosophical. Humanity had discovered its purpose in the universe, not as conquerors or explorers or traders, but as the species that answered when others called for help. They had become the galaxy's emergency responders, the ones who showed up when hope seemed lost. The devourers, meanwhile, had gone silent. Their stellar cages stopped appearing. Their harvesting operations ceased. Long-range sensors detected massive movements in deep space, as if something vast was awakening to deal with the disruption to its ancient patterns. Admiral Zhang, now in his 70s but still sharp as a blade, often stood before the memorial wall in Unity Station's central hub. The wall listed every species that had been lost to the devourers over the millennia, hundreds of civilizations that had died alone, their final messages unanswered. "Never again," he would say, touching the crystalline surface where their names were inscribed. "Never again does anyone die alone." And across the galaxy, from the outer rim to the galactic core, species that had once cowered in fear began to stand together. The age of isolation was ending. The age of cooperation had begun. All because one day an SOS had arrived on Earth and humans had answered with a fleet. The galaxy would never be the same.